Greetings! Welcome to the Unplugged review of hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. Hi, welcome to a thing I thought might be good or not. This is Unplugged Reviews. Minimal script, no footage, because it's just me talking about an experience. And today's experience is H3VR, a game by Rust Limited, opening development in 2016, and is planned to launch sometime at the end of 2020, maybe 2021, depending on things. It's all about simulating a variety of firearms in excruciating detail. Again, I don't have the game in front of me. I'm only playing it when I'm at my younger brother's place because he has the HMD and he has a computer that can run it, but he can't run OBS and Steam VR at the same time. So bear with me for this demo of excruciating detail. Imagine the AK in every other game. You rock the mag in, you pull the bolt, and you fire. Easy. But in H3VR, you can't just pull the bolt back because the fire selector, when on safe, actually blocks the bolt from going all the way back. You need to take the weapon off of safe, then ride the bolt back, and then you can fire. But you'll be really inaccurate because you need to place your other controller near the foregrip and hold it down to keep the front end of the weapon steady. It's one of them types of simulators. The game's tutorial takes place at the Sampler Platter firing range and steakhouse. Granted, that steakhouse recently exploded in what was no doubt a firing range themed incident, but you still have free reign over the various weapons on offer and a screen at each buffet that shows you how to work things. Grab a pistol, grab a magazine, spawn lock the magazine in your inventory so you can spawn duplicates, load a copy of that magazine into the weapon, pull the slide back chamber around, take it off a safe if necessary, and then you're ready to fire at wacky food themed targets. It's great. And they're not just food themed because you're at a former steakhouse. Lead developer Anton Hand was worried about the prospect of his game including human targets and looking like some sort of murder simulator to the public. So instead you point your guns and other weapons at gigantic enemy hot dogs clad in body armor. They're called saucigs because it's like sausage but bad. Also, you fire your gun at giant enemy hot dogs clad in body armor was a sentence never said before until Anton gifted us this game from the heavens. It's good. Once you've figured out the basics of loading and firing a weapon, you can then head off to a multitude of different environments to shoot those guns in. They're called scenes in-game. Most of them are pretty standard ranges, with the heart of them being this big panel where you spawn one of the game's 300 plus weapons. There's a lot of firearms. Many of them are MP5s, because he added like 28 MP5s in one patch. Oops. The spawn panel is not a perfect system. It's split up between different weapon types, so for a newcomer, figuring out what's a battle rifle and what's an assault rifle and what's a carbine and what's a personal defense weapon and what's a submachine gun, it can be a little tricky. I wish there was a more granular search system, like just being able to grab, say, a year range or all the weapons in alphabetical order or something. Pick weapons based on caliber type, or you place a magazine down and it shows you all the weapons that can take that magazine. But from what I gather, this is a feature planned to make it in before the 1.0 release, so hold on to your gun hats. Another thing that bugs me is that a lot of the joke or Easter egg weapons in the game are not in the item spawner panel at all. There's things like the prototype cyber pistol, the meter-long M1911, the gigantic M1911, that sort of stuff. But some of the joke weapons are spawnable, like the oversized Calibri. It's the size of a howitzer, but the 1911 that's about the same size isn't in there. Or there's a deagle made of cardboard, and it shoots cardboard rounds. It's just odd to me what made the cut and what didn't. But anyways, this is more or less the bulk of the game. Grab a weapon, classic, obscure, fictional, or otherwise, out of the item spawner, figure out how to load it up, and plunk away at targets in the various ranges. There's a warehouse scene, a sniping corridor, a traditional gun range, there is the Sampler Platter, 2 different desert maps, and then there's somebody's backyard. The underlying simulation is very in-depth, but it's not all that substantial from a gameplay perspective. Gameplay perspective. We added extra S's in 2020. But it doesn't need to be, I think. VR is still in its infancy. We're coming up on 30 years since the first public attempts at the tech, and it's still in its infancy. Most $30 VR games revolve around grabbing and pulling out a bunch of stuff until the game tells you you're done. Things like Job Simulator and Virtual Reality, or Accounting, where the heart of the game is just throwing strange scenarios at the player that they solve by walking around, clicking a button, and continuing. But that wasn't enough for Anton, because there's all manners of crazy minigames within H3VR. The star of the show is Take and Hold. It's an arcadey roguelike mode where you spawn with one gun, some ammo, and a melee weapon, and your goal is to wander the map looking for hold points, which are areas you need to secure by taking out enemies and then shooting at crystals when they appear, all without dying. Once the hold point's been secured, you are then awarded override tokens. These are then cashed in for new weapons if you run out of ammo or just want something new. This mode is incredibly granular, with all sorts of options to toggle to change up the experience. And I've personally taken a liking to playing this with the character Ricky Random, who spawns with a totally random gun. I've gotten an M1A1 bazooka as my first ranged weapon. I've gotten Sasha from Team Fortress 2 as my first ranged weapon. I've gotten pretty much everything in between. This mode is tough as nails though, and depending on your locomotion style, can be quite a workout. H3VR has tons of ways to get around that you can toggle between, and they're kind of split 50-50 between various modes of teleport and various types of smooth locomotion. My personal favorite of the bunch is a locomotion mode called Arm Swinger, where you hold down the movement button and then you pump the controllers back and forth to simulate running. It doesn't really feel that motion sick when I play the game this way, even when I have the even when I have the movement speed cranked all the way up. And then plus, if you just make like big swimming motions, you move even faster. And if you hold down both buttons, you move even faster too. You can just sprint around. Nobody can stop you. The other modes worth talking about are, you have the Return of the Rotwieners, which is this sort of zombie survival rogue light in which you fight off Sosigs gone rancid and also like crazy survivor hot dogs to collect equipment to make power-ups. And while ammo is freely available at the safe houses, you're going to want to be quiet. Bring a suppressed weapon or melee enemies, as venturing too far from a safe house, guns blazing, will leave you open to getting surrounded by tons of zombie hot dogs. This scene's got all sorts of quests and obtainable loot, and it's pretty dang charming. The other game mode I've taken a liking to is Meat Fortress, an official Team Fortress 2 crossover event featuring the vast majority of the stock TF2 arsenal playable in VR. Most of the Meat Fortress weapons have been reworked to make logical sense given the more simulatory mechanics, but otherwise they're all really familiar and, I must add, comedically large. It's hard to explain just how small I felt in H3VR. It's wild. Things like Sasha and the rocket launchers, the M4 and the Garand and the like, they're about as big as I expected them to be, but then I take out the TF2 pistol or the revolver, or hack the Hek 8 rifle, or I just stand next to a Sosig, and all of a sudden I feel tiny and vulnerable. My little baby hands were not meant to wrap themselves around a pistol this big. But yeah, it's a shockingly fully featured rendition of the weapons in TF2, and the Sosig renditions of the 9 classes are really trying their hardest to emulate the game. That's another point. H3VR is single player only. Anton was, again, afraid of the buzz surrounding a realistic murder simulator, but I think the game has a lot of party pass-around potential. Things like take and hold runs, or even just finding dumb ways to osmosis a gun magazine into the side of a gun, that sort of thing. I mean, it's fun to kill the Sosigs too, so I don't mind. I mean, it makes me a bit sad when I end up breaking their beefy neck or ripping them in half and they just respond with a, "Give me a break, pal," or just groan in frustration. But Anton assures us that all Sosigs get recycled and don't actually mind the process. So I'll get over it. Yeah, I get sad about killing giant hot dogs in the game where you kill giant hot dogs because they sound upset with me when I perform the actions they want me to do. Most of them are just minding their own business, which is why it gets to me. My soul is too damn soft for this game. I don't mind it in Take and Hold, but like just walking around like the Proving Ground map and then just like ripping them apart, it makes me feel a little awful. The only other game mode I really want to talk about, and I don't have a script for this because I only played it after I wrote the script, go figure, is the Gunnasium. There is one sort of secret locomotion mode in H3VR. Only a couple maps have these like grabbing handles, and you grab them the same way you grab a gun, and you pull yourself towards them, and it actually moves you like proportional to the motion you make with your arm. And there's like all sorts of like monkey bars and grab handles in the Gunnasium. It's maddening. It's ridiculous. I can't thoroughly explain exactly what's happening. But you just grab it and moving yourself around this like big three-dimensional space. There's also some other mini games. There's this skee ball one where you throw grenades, and I'm playing the game on an Oculus Quest, my younger brother's Oculus Quest, and for whatever reason, trying to throw things doesn't work right. I don't understand. And there's also a bunch of prototypes from when the game used less robust AI. And I really hope those maps get updated before early access closes, because it does make the game feel a bit disjointed. You have some maps where you have, actual, hot dog characters. They're all floppy. And some maps, it's just hot dog-shaped robots that just kind of just walk in a straight line. I kind of hope things like Worst World, which is like a Western-themed sort of quest mode, I hope that gets updated with the SOSIGs before the official launch. But it sounds like Rust isn't too concerned with racing towards 1.0. It's a really open dev cycle, so that might just end up happening. So now we get to where my more subjective thoughts on the game are. It's fun. It's the most fun VR title I've played, and I've played 5. I've played Job Simulator, Virtual Reality, Tilt Brush, my own VR festival prototype we devved last year, and this. Cost is a big limiting factor, hence why I'm using someone else's rig to play the game, and why this review is unplugged. On top of needing to purchase an HMD on, oh my god, I have a 6-figure student loan bill coming up money, I'd also need to invest in a new computer, as the one I have just barely meets the minimum specs for any amount of Steam VR. And there's just not enough worthwhile software for me to even make that sort of financial leap. Again, this is like the only VR title I've had interest in, so I'm not going to buy, even if the prices come down, and I'm able to get a VR-ready computer for $1,500 and a VR headset for $200, that's $1,700 more than I want to spend. So, hence why I'm using other person's hardware. But it's the only game I personally could almost justify the investment into VR. This is something that's both fully featured and has a significant degree of replayability, even just from a single-person perspective. A lot of VR titles on the market right now are these 2-hour tech demos that you really only get your money's worth by setting up the rig and getting the whole family to give it a shot. So you run on your lonesome, then you get your dad to try it, then you get your younger brother, and your drunk aunt who really just only wants to play the Family Guy City tapping game. And then before you know it, you've clocked 34 hours into it, and you personally feel like you got your money's worth even if you didn't play the game for much of it. With H3VR, not only can you get the whole family to play the range since you only shoot at processed meat and paper, but you can also just get a lot of mileage out of the range modes, comparing and contrasting the 1.5 million MP5 variants, trying out some obscure weapons, maybe sprucing up a pistol with a stock and a sight and an air horn and 30 lasers and a blowtorch. And even then, there's a wide variety of other modes and things to experiment with. There's a lot of people online who just play Take and Hold. That's the game for them. So H3VR really makes up for its relatively low price tag of 20 bones right there. But again, it's not a perfect game. There is a lot of quality of life changes that need to be made in 2020 to get the game acceptable for a 1.0 release. The physics tend to feel jittery and imprecise. I understand that that's something innately in VR, but I feel like there is some sort of smoothing that could be done to make things work better. I feel like some of the collision is a little weird. Some of the controls are hard to work with, like reloading certain revolvers or grabbing the chainsaw grip of a minigun. Sometimes things just don't work right. And some of the actual button presses and the like are often inconsistent between firearm platforms. It's a little rough around the edges, but I sincerely doubt there will ever be a VR title that isn't rough around the edges, just due to the jittery nature of VR movement and VR design. You're tracking someone's head position 90 times a second, and the human body just kind of wiggles around for no reason. So movement and the like will be jittery and weird. It's an imprecise medium that ultimately won't ever one-to-one perfectly recreate the act of being in a space physically. But damn it, people like Anton try. And I can't blame him for trying. Kudos to Rust Limited, you're doing the Lord's work. Again, rough around the edges, but it's fun. I feel like a good game can kind of excuse some of its roughness by just being fun, or having a good point. This game doesn't have a good point. This game is just fun. It's good. Also, I'm pretty sure the SOSIGs pride themselves on being 100% all beef, which, given the red coloration, win me bonus points because it makes me want a Vienna beef hot dog. 10 out of 10. I was going to go buy a pack of Vienna beef hot dogs. I did not do that because I haven't been to the grocery store yet. Anyways, it's good. It's a good game. Thank you. Hey, so this was my first ever attempt at an Unplugged review. I've never done anything like this. I thought it might be interesting, especially trying to make do with the fact that I can't record the game. If you liked this, please let me know. It would be very much appreciated. Thank you. We're on the outro. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, I'd recommend subscribing. Patreon and social media links are in the description.